This is Real Talk with Rosana Lucia and Brianna Black. Alright, so this first podcast is about the existence of mermaids. I'm Rosana Lucia, and this is produced by Brianna Black. I have special guest here with me today, Professor Nicholas Radko, who is an environmental geologist, as well as Alexis Hampton, who is the EIC of the Georgian Reflector. For this first segment, I'm just going to be telling you guys a bit about the background mythology of mermaids. As far as the Oxford Dictionary defines the term mermaid, they say it's a fictitious or mythical half-human sea creature with the head and trunk of a woman and the tail of a fish, conventionally depicted as beautiful with long flowing golden hair. Sirens of Greek mythology, especially the Odyssey, conceived of as half bird and half woman, gradually shifted to the image of a fish-tailed woman. This shift possibly started as early as the Hellenistic period, but is clearly evident in mermaid-like depictions of quote-unquote sirens in later Christian bestiaries. Some attributes of Homer's sirens, such as the enticement of men and their beautiful song, also became attached to the mermaid. The first known mermaid stories appeared in Assyria circa 1000 BC. The goddess Atagartis, mother of the Assyrian queen Semiramis, excuse my pronunciation, loved a mortal, a shepherd, and unintentionally killed him. Ashamid, ashamed, I thought that was another name. She jumped into a lake and took the form of a fish, but the waters would not conceal her divine beauty. Thereafter, she took the form of a mermaid, human above the waist, fish below. There are also naturalist theories on the origins of mermaids, postulating they derived from sightings of manatees, dolphins, or even seals. As far as sightings go, John Smith, famous for settling Jamestown, recorded a mermaid sighting in 1614 off the coast of Newfoundland. The quote reads, "Her long green hair imparted to her an original character that was by no means unattractive." In 1493, sailing off the coast of Hispaniola, Christopher Columbus spotted 3 sirens, or mermaids, which he said were not as beautiful as they are represented, due to some masculine features in their faces, but those are considered to be sightings of manatees, making his mermaid logbook entry the first recorded observation of the marine mammal in North America. Skipping hundreds of years ahead, in 1998, dive master Jeff Leacher, 43 at the time, photographed the creature known as the Kauai Point Mermaid. I'm going to read you that story now. For more than 50 years, people have reported sightings of mermaids off the coast of Hawaii's Big Island, but the sightings were never taken seriously, until a dive boat captain finally captured the half-woman, half-fish on film. Dive master Jeff Leacher, 43, photographed the creature known as the Kauai Point Mermaid on April 12, 1998, as he and 6 other divers were exploring the ocean bottom about 20 minutes off Hawaii's sunny coast. Leacher points to the spot where he photographed the mermaid in this article. "I'd heard about her before," says Leacher. "There, not 10 feet from the bow, was what looked like a nude woman. She had long flowing hair and one of the most beautiful faces I'd ever seen. But there was no way a human could be swimming so fast. She was keeping right up with the dolphins. Then she leapt into the air, and my heart almost gave out on me. The entire lower half of her body was covered with scales and tapered back into a huge fishtail. She jumped once more, then disappeared under the surface. All 10 people on the boat witnessed the bizarre incident, but there was another incredible surprise still ahead. About an hour later, we arrived at the point where we were diving. I was photographing some colorful fish with my underwater camera. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my right leg. She shot by me like a streak of lightning, then turned and came back past me, swimming the other way. I just aimed the camera and started snapping pictures. I kept shooting as she broke for the surface and swam away." If you look up the Leacher mermaid story, you'll see the picture that he took. It was actually authenticated by 3 noted photography labs, and all 3 say that the photos are genuine and have not been tampered with. His last quote is, "I feel very lucky that I'm the one to prove to the world what people have known here for half a century." Going on, the last sighting was in February 2012. forgive me for my pronunciation again, when workers on 2 reservoirs near Kauai and Mutare in Zimbabwe stopped when workers refused to continue, stating that mermaids had hounded them away from the sites. It was reported by Samuel Sipepa Nimoko, the Water Resource Minister. Moving on to segment 2, which is the real or not segment, which I'll be asking you guys some questions. First, I want to say it's really odd that the artistic depiction of mermaids across the globe in very early time periods, even China has recorded people in the 4th century BC having seen shark people. On top of that, 95% of Earth's oceans are unexplored. So does this mean that mermaids could actually be more than just a myth? I've asked Professor Nicholas Radko, an environmental geologist here at Georgia Southern University, to discuss the scientific possibility of mermaids' existence. So my first question is whether you believe mermaids are real or not, and if you could just elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say, at least from a scientific standpoint, if I was being purely objective, I would not officially believe in mermaids. Obviously, there's a lot of unexplained things that people see, and I think that maybe they are seeing something very real, but from a biological standpoint and an evolutionary standpoint, the idea of the classic human on top, fish on the bottom mermaid seems incredibly implausible to almost the point of impossibility. But we could, make this a sort of a discussion more. There are other sort of answers to why people have seen this or thought they have seen this for centuries or millennia, as you point out.
So hypothetically, if mermaids did exist, do you think that evolutionarily speaking, it's a possibility that when our fish ancestors ascended onto land, maybe a portion of them went deeper into sea? And I only say this because we've yet to discover most of our oceans, meaning the conditions in which they needed to adapt could be completely hospitable for something like a mermaid.
Right. So I like that question because you're drawing on something that I feel like a lot of people get introduced to once you get into maybe a next level science class and you talk about evolution, where yes, there's a common ancestor between modern fish and humans. But that's something that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. And at that point, right, there's a huge gulf between that fish and the tetrapods is really what it ends up being, moving on to land. And we have sweeping ages of amphibians and all sorts of things before we even have mammals, maybe 100 million years after that point. They're just very evolutionarily disconnected. So in the specific way that you phrased that, no, I don't think it would have been possible for a mermaid to have emerged evolutionarily in that way. But again, I think there are maybe other non-evolutionary explanations for what people have seen and why it's such a phenomenon in the culture and in history.
Cool. So now we're going to get weird. Hypothetically, how do you think mermaids would have reproduced? Are they mammals? Do they lay eggs? Like, what in your mind where do you go when you think about that?
Yeah, okay, so I go to a very specific place when I think about that, and that is an episode of the show Futurama. If you're familiar with Futurama,
that's my favorite
there's
TV show.
it's a great TV show, and there's a particularly good episode that actually deals with kind of ribs Georgia a little bit. The premise is that Atlanta has sunk into the sea, and the people have evolved into merfolk, mostly because they've drank a lot of Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Anyway, the whole point is that they lay eggs. There's a very funny scene where character Fry's trying to get with a mermaid, and she's like, "Oh well, I just lay my eggs and then I leave and you fertilize them." Yeah, he's not having that. So I choose to believe that Futurama would hypothetically be correct and that they would lay eggs.
Yeah, I think they've gotten a lot of things right, so that's
sure.
where I'd go too. Well, thank you for your scientific explanation and observations. Now I'm going to discuss mermaids in a not-so-scientific manner with Georgia Southern student and EIC George Ann Reflector student Alexis Hampton. So let's start with the most basic question again. Do you believe in mermaids?
Absolutely.
Very different answer. You want to elaborate?
It's probably like not such sound logic, but I've always been taught that like people don't just make up stuff like that. So the way that my dad explained it to me is like somebody imagined the TV before it became a real thing. So I believe in a lot of mythical creatures, specifically mermaids and unicorns. So
I kind of want to hear a list now.
Well, I'm super into Greek mythology.
Cool.
So, like, centaurs. And
Yeah. You
like,
think there's centaurs over here?
absolutely. Or at least, well, no.
I can get with
Even-
you on some point, but.
Right. Well, no, even if they don't exist now, I think that they did at some point.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What about
Mermaids.
fairies?
Yep.
All right.
Sprites, all that stuff.
All right.
And also, I feel like, what's the harm in believing in it? Like, what difference does it make if I believe in it and if I don't in the world?
You know, I actually believe in Santa Claus, so, and I get made fun of a lot, so I'm
But
with you
you
there.
Believe what you want.
So let's talk magic. Do you really think that if mermaids were real, that they'd have magical powers or singing abilities that could potentially lure men to their deaths?
I want to say yes.
Because you want to believe women are that powerful, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, I do. Because I'm thinking about, like, Medusa from Greek
Mhm.
mythology. She was,
Badass.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why, but whenever I think of mermaids, I automatically shift to, like, Medusa. And I'm like, if, she was that powerful, I don't understand why mermaids can't be. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I want to believe yes. Obviously, I don't know, all that goes into the background of mermaids, but, I don't think that it's impossible.
So then, speaking still about magic, do you think that mermaids might walk among us and they do that thing like in the TV shows where they change their forms and then when they touch water or a full moon appears or something like that, they like change back?
That's the part that I don't believe, because
Really?
yeah,
I think that's the part, like, I believe aliens exist, and, like, I think that
Yeah.
they walk among us, so why couldn't mermaids?
the only reason that I'm iffy about it is because the way that it's portrayed in TV shows and movies, it is like if somebody like sprinkles water on you, you're automatically a mermaid.
See,
and it's like
that's where, when I wrote this question, I think that I thought it was more likely that you'd have to touch, like, ocean water.
that makes sense, and that's not a theory that I've heard before. So if it's just ocean water, then yeah, sure. But the way that I'm thinking of the movie, I think it's called Aquamarine.
I love Aquamarine.
Like,
I forgot about that movie.
Any
oh my
second
God.
that she touched water, she was
I
in danger
love
of
that
becoming a
movie.
mermaid, and I'm like, I feel like that's not how that works.
They need to make those starfish earrings that, like, you put on your ears and they give you
Yes.
compliments.
Oh my god, those were so cute.
They were so cute. They need to make robot versions.
Yeah.
So speaking about pop culture, then what was your favorite mermaid show or movie? Mine was H2O, but that's only because Ricky was my spirit animal.
Yeah. Mine was actually Aquamarine, just because I really, really love JoJo, and I like seeing her as
yeah.
an actor.
Yeah, super cool.
And I just thought that was a really cute movie. I can't remember what the main character's actual actress name is.
Can't remember either.
But it was nice to see her in a movie that she was kind in, because the only other movie that I had seen
Yeah,
her.
she was a bitch.
in Sleepover.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god, she
I think that was the worst movie I've ever seen, actually. But
So
That's
I think we have a pretty big generational gulf here. I know
Yeah.
neither of the movies you're talking about, but I was a huge Little Mermaid fan when I was a kid.
Oh,
I had
I
that
did
one on
love The Little
VHS and the
Mermaid.
Disney clamshell. That was a go-to back in the late '80s when I was watching Disney movies.
that's
So,
awesome.
I
feel
don't
like
No,
there were
early
more,
'90s
like,
must have been. I think that movie.
mermaid movies in like the 80s too. There's one in specific that I can see the poster.
There's
for,
I
but
believe
don't
it's
know.
Splash. Is that
No,
it?
there's one more. Oh, you know what? There was another Disney movie with, help me out here, guys. It's like Mermaid Baby, and he's a kid in high school. Do you know what I'm talking about? And it was
Is
like,
Oh,
It's
it's
the
recent,
90s.
isn't it?
The
it was
13th
the
year.
night. The
Is
what?
that the 13th year?
The 13th year.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
that's it. You guys should totally watch that. That's
Okay.
really good. But that also has the whole like water thing, and he's a
Mhm.
swimmer, and he
Oh,
like
wow.
gets his powers when he turns 13, and
Oh,
so then he
wow.
can't swim anymore, and it's this whole it's this whole thing.
That's
But
so sad.
really good movie. But yeah, I also think that like we have a generational gap here, like with our opinions, just like
Well.
even though like you're strictly from like a scientific research perspective, but like
Yeah, and like I said, I came into this trying to adopt that
Yeah.
specific perspective to bring to the show here. But
so do you think if you had like no scientific knowledge that you would believe?
it's really hard to say,
Yeah,
right? It's hard to
yeah, I
separate that
know.
out because I've been, in science for so long. It's hard to say. I mean, but like, you think about other things like, you mentioned aliens earlier. I think that's a super real possibility. That's something I totally feel like there are aliens out there in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, maybe I would in a different life that's non-sciencey feel that way about mermaids.
But wouldn't technically mermaids be aliens?
Could be. That's a plausible explanation of what these sightings are. Who knows?
All right, well, you heard it here, folks.
I feel like mermaid sex is probably a lot like scissoring.
Oh, okay.
I can't imagine that it would be anything else. And I know that they're like mermen, and for that it's like the way that we've been introduced to mermaids or merpeople, they don't have any like external.
But that's just like dolphins have like. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. But
well, okay, so
like
now we're talking about
out.
we have, and you're correct, but like generally speaking, but you're mashing up a mammal with a fish, right? So what reproduction do they have? Do they have fish reproduction or mammal reproduction?
Well, I guess if you're waist down, their uterus isn't
right.
Yeah.
So I think they're laying eggs and fertilizing them outside the body, not internally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the tail starts under the uterus, so.
Interesting. So you're thinking live birth? They're viviparous? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I do think so. Yeah.
Live birth for like a mermaid sounds really dramatic,
doesn't it?
I mean, I know
I think it might
it's
be
just
easier. They're like slimy and it just goes. You
It's
know
not
what I mean?
made for it.
No,
but
have you
being
seen
birthed, like,
dolphins giving birth? It literally just shoots out of them.
I've never seen a dolphin giving birth.
I have
I'll make
seen
sure
you
I
should
look it
definitely
up.
look that up.
giving birth.
Yeah, it's like that too. It
Seahorses
just goes.
giving birth is so traumatizing.
That's scary.
Oh my
They
god!
literally-
I don't know.
They're like
Yes,
right.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
They're like convulsing. I'm like,
I'm just imagining it in my head now, and I'm just a little bit uncomfortable. But have you seen? I haven't seen it yet, but The Lighthouse, that movie with no. Okay, that's an assignment for you too. It's
Okay.
like
I've
a
heard of
Robert Pattinson movie. I haven't seen it yet either, but apparently there is mermaid sex in that movie. So
Robert Pattinson is so down for anything.
I
Yeah.
love that
Like,
man.
absolutely.
I will be his mermaid. I love it. But yeah, on that note, thank you for tuning in. This has been Real Talk with Rosana Lucia, Professor Nicholas Radko, and Alexis Hampton. Thank you.